Board President Noble, members of board, Superintendent Dr. Griffin. We have one speaker here present, and then we have nobody online. So with that, I'd like to bring up Miguel Acosta. Oh, let me go over the guidelines here real quick. Sorry about that, Miguel. Public forum includes online and/or virtual participation as needed, as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. You will receive a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take any action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. And with that, I'd like to bring up our first speaker, Miguel Acosta.
And possibly the last speaker. Madam Superintendent, Madam President, members of the board, staff, friends, family, community. We had hoped to have some families here today because we understood you were going to talk about family security, safety, et cetera, student safety and all. But there was more raids today, and people are really living in a state of terror. I was discussing that with one of the board members just the other day. There was a joint task force operation today, and apparently they bring ICE along even when it's got nothing to do with immigration, and it just scares everybody. I'm not sure exactly how it's affected attendance or even how accurate attendance reflects what's really happening. But what I can tell you is that people are spending the day living in terror, not knowing if they're going to see their parents at the end of the day, or if they're going to be able to pick up their kids at the end of the day. And families, we're going to be here tonight to ask that you really consider learning from home as an option. Even if people want to, they really want to get their kids here, they need to go to work and they're doing the best that they can. But there's some days when their knees are buckling and they'd rather have an option. You know what I mean? And we'd like to be able to do it how we had talked about it during COVID, actually. To use it as an opportunity to do some capacity building among parents, to train parents as tutors, and support for other parents, right? So given any kind of situation, we'd have, sort of a network of people in the community in each of the neighborhoods. We're currently working in 20 neighborhoods. We've got councils developing in each of those 20 neighborhoods. Those 20 neighborhoods represent about half of the young people in Santa Fe, so most of the students in the schools. And it would be really a good opportunity, right? That's where the majority of the Alice families are, that United Way is looking at. It'd be a real opportunity to do some targeted engagement work with families where they live. So really, like to ask that you'd consider that. A couple other things that we wanted to bring up today was one, the Cielo Azul, the process of name change and all that went fairly well, and things have kicked off and all that. But the other part of it, right, the conversation around legacy, around farm workers, labor movement, Hispano, Chicano, Latino history, community empowerment and all that, that still hasn't happened. It wasn't happening before, but we talked about actually using this as an opportunity to get something really going. And now I think with the new community schools coordinator there, hopefully we can establish a real community school council and work with local organizations to really develop that well. Can I have a little bit more? Just the last thing I wanted to bring up, and I do appreciate the work of the board, having been a board member myself, and I know you have to adjust and pivot and all that. But the work that you're doing now, or considering now around ECO and another IB school, great creative work, but we really wish that work was focused more on the families in the district that are outlined in the Martinez-Yazzie decision, right? That kind of creativity, that kind of focus work could take us a long way in terms of really making progress in our Southside schools. And also the sort of cautionary note about creating places that could eventually become white affluent enclaves within the district, right? Another IB school, just like charters often are, right? Just because of the expectations of a family, it just ends up attracting certain families and putting up barriers towards others. So we really want to be careful about those kinds of things. I was contracted personally, and we brought in a bunch of the dreamers to work on recruiting for ECO when it was created. We registered something like 70, 75 students and what have you. So there's a connection there that we really would like to not see lost, right? I understand there's some challenges, but we'd like to see some of the intention behind the effort in the first place maintained somehow. Either maybe if it's not there, spread out throughout the district. And one of the pathways, one of the work areas that we'd really like to consider, and if you look around, not just at the district, but city, county, state government, landfill, everywhere else, what they're looking for is well-trained young people that can manage, that can project manage, right? That can think, that can organize, that can do things. We've got challenges at all of our public institutions because we don't have capable people there, right? So they're going out of state to find people that don't stay, that take up housing that we need, for local folks, and they take jobs that could be going here locally. So just some things to think about, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes public forum for tonight.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to our union update. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Griffin, President Noble, member of the board, public. Christy Krenick, new union president, instructional coach at Milagro. I do want to share a couple of highlights that I have heard from our community. First, a shout out to two maintenance workers, Brenda and Erica, that stopped to support the NEA president's, she had car trouble. So they stopped to check to make sure that she was well. And I just want to, to me, that makes my heart warm because that is Santa Fe Public Schools employees. We go above and beyond for our community members. And then also because I am at Milagro, just to celebrate that our enrollment is up and that the staff are reporting the benefits of implementing middle school philosophy. And that is really supporting the whole child, creating families. So a group of core teachers have the same students all day, so they are working with the families, the community supports with that. For our union news, we've been able to host our ARs for training and a meeting. And also we are continuing to work on the edits for the CBA in hopes of getting that up on the internet and then printed shortly. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. We'll go ahead and move on to board announcements and follow-up. Yes, Dr. Gonzalez.
President Noble, Superintendent, and members of the board. Excuse me. I wrote a letter to the editor, and it was too long, so I decided to write a my view, and I did write a my view, and I sent it in, and it's never been published. So I'm going to read the letter that I wrote because it's shorter. I would like to respond to Bill Church's commentary published on July 25th, 2026. I was elected to the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education in January 2020. Throughout my time on the board, it has been our consistent practice for the board president to serve as the primary spokesperson for the board. During my tenure, we have had several different board presidents, and each has followed this practice. In Mr. Church's July 25th commentary, he quoted Andre Salkin, who stated that Santa Fe School Board President Kate Noble, elected to the role in January, has revived a practice from her prior years, long stint in the leadership position, designating herself as the board's sole voice. This statement is simply inaccurate. The board president has always served as the board's spokesperson, regardless of who held the position. On occasion, when a board member has particular expertise on a specific issue, that member has spoken with the media. These instances have been the exception, not the rule. President Noble works diligently in service to our students, staff, and community. I found the tone of Mr. Church's commentary to be unnecessarily disrespectful and dismissive of her leadership. At our recent strategic planning session, the board unanimously agreed to continue the longstanding practice of having the board president serve as the board's primary spokesperson. The decision reflects our commitment to clear, consistent communication with the public and is not a new policy or a departure from best practice. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. I very much appreciate that. Any other board announcements or follow-up? I just wanted to do one. I assume I didn't miss anything like this at the beginning, but was hoping that we might take a moment of silence. There's been a lot of them recently, but this one in particular, as Dolly Parton passed away, and she was, of course, very big on education and literacy, particularly early literacy. And like many others, I've probably spent a lot of time in the past couple of days watching clips of Dolly Parton and really sort of letting it hit me how big and good she was as a force. In particular, it seems, there's some themes that arise about how she was very much someone who embraced being herself and encouraged others to really be themselves, how she wanted to do good, a lot of good, and had even said she had more to do, and that she was very big on being kind and generous in all things that she did. So I hope we will all take a minute and think about how we can be ourselves, do good, and be kind and generous, especially as we do this very important and sometimes contentious and difficult work of public education. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yes, go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
I read that the Imagination Library started in New Mexico.
Really?
It's pretty cool, huh?
That's very cool. Well, and I must say my organization, Growing Up New Mexico, is the affiliate for Santa Fe County. We've been doing it for decades now, and there's about 2,700 children in Santa Fe County who get a book every month that is mailed through our affiliate program. So we're very proud of that. It's an incredible program. Okay, anything else on board announcements and follow-up? We'll move on to superintendent announcements and follow-up. Dr. Griffin.
Thank you, Board President Noble. Members of the board, I don't feel like I should have to follow that up. Board Member Blea just asked me, hey, when are we getting our student representatives? And the applications are due tomorrow, and they should be attending our September 10th board meeting. So we're excited to welcome them aboard. This Saturday, I was able to attend our first annual community school parent conference, and we had our 7 community school coordinators hosted the first annual community school parent conference, bringing families together to connect with the district departments and community partners. We had 18 community providers there, 8 district departments sharing information with the families who came. We also were honored to welcome the Public Education Department's Community Schools Bureau and Safe and Healthy Schools Bureau joining us, showing support. And of course, a big thank you to all our families, community partners, and staff who helped make the conference such a success. Our communications department has rolled out a new communication that comes out twice a month, and it's called the Santa Fe Public Schools Connect. It's a newsletter for families in the broader Santa Fe Public Community Schools community. This edition brings together important district updates, upcoming events, student and staff highlights, helpful resources, and stories from across our schools. It's a really nice way to celebrate the great things we have going on. So if we have any community members that would like to receive that bi-monthly communication, they can email Tara Melton, our public information officer. A brief update on our digital wellness work. Since July 30th, Digital Learning Team has continued moving this work forward with both staff and families. Screen time guidance sessions were offered for K-5, middle school, and high school teachers, and the recordings have been made available district-wide as teacher updated videos and resources. Our digital learning staff have also been sharing resources with families at back-to-school events, including Community School Parent Conference this past Saturday. This week, principals received their first detailed review of the classroom screen time guidance and resources they can share with staff. Looking ahead, the team is continuing to strengthen the digital wellness webpage and will share screen time guidance with families in early September. They are also beginning to reach out to staff, families, and students to gauge interest in participating in the Digital Wellness Advisory Council. There will be additional opportunities for our community to learn, ask questions, and provide feedback as we continue developing the broader digital engagement framework. We have some exciting news about the expansion of language other than English, or LOTE, across the district. Santa Fe Public Schools has a long and proud history of high-quality bilingual programming, currently offered at 9 schools. This year, we're building on that foundation by expanding language learning opportunities for even more students across the district. We budgeted for 7 dedicated LOTE positions, and more than 40 additional teachers participated in training this summer. For the participating students, this will mean opportunities to learn introductory Spanish while also exploring cultures in Latin America. We are also offering French, American Sign Language, Dari, Pushto, and at select schools. I want to thank our educators for embracing this opportunity and bringing culturally and linguistically responsive learning for our students. And last and finally, I want to provide a brief update on our enrollment. For our Day 10 enrollment count, we are currently sitting at 9,384 students district-wide. Our kinder enrollment, I have good news about this, is at 689, which means we've held relatively steady compared to last year's kinder numbers, and that's encouraging as we continue to monitor our enrollment trends. Overall, we appear to be down just under 500 students again this year. Our next steps for our team is to better understand where those students have gone, and we'll be analyzing the enrollment data and following up to determine what we can learn about students who are no longer enrolled in Santa Fe Public Schools. Thank you very much, Board.
Any questions for the superintendent on her announcements? Okay, we will move on to our presentation on keeping families safe.
Good evening, Board President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Griffin. My colleagues and I are here to present tonight an update on keeping families safe. I'm going to open with just a little bit of brief historical context for the audience. In January of 2025, the Board of Education passed a resolution. It was 2024-25-9, reaffirming Santa Fe Public Schools as a safe haven. It really enforced the district's commitment to a safe, supportive, and inclusive learning environment. Under this resolution, It really directed us to protect the learning environment and the safety and security of all of our students and families. It reaffirmed our protection around student privacy and upholding FERPA. It led us to define protected areas within our school sites. We also had a directive to provide training to staff on specific to bullying prevention and conflict resolution, ensure that counseling access was available for all of our students, maintain pathways to report bullying and harassment, and ensured that we communicated eligibility for higher education regardless of immigration status, continued to support the District Equity Council, and were to act as a liaison and a partner in intergovernmental groups. Last year, the board, in its attempt to reaffirm the resolution, moved towards keeping families safe, SFPS, and immigration. And under this, it directed the superintendent to provide regular updates to the board on the progress and implementation of the resolution, ensure that we established training for protocols of lockdown and appropriate actions during any potential federal enforcement activities, designated immigrant liaisons at each school site to support and connect families with our essential resources, and collaborated with partners to proactively provide families with critical support information and alignment. And up next, I'm going to welcome my deputy, Raquel Plaza, to talk about our accomplishments and next steps.
Buenas tardes, Presidenta Novo, Vicepresidenta José, miembros de la Junta Directiva, Superintendenta y el personal y la audiencia. This slide shows kind of like the timeline of the accomplishments at the end of last year. So from February, there was in February, there was a MOU approved between SFPS and NEA that established all the roles of our family liaisons. That's what we call them, family liaisons. By March, all the family liaisons that had a training, it was imparted by different departments from the Santa Fe Public Schools, like communications, student wellness, safety, language and culture, several departments. And this training provided all the liaisons with different aspects to ensure alignment and support for the families. By March, also, there was a communication sent to the families. It was a frequently asked questions document. It was bilingual in English and Spanish. All the links are provided in that presentation, and it was developed and shared with each school community. March 18th, a letter was sent to families. It was emailed and shared, communicating the board's commitment to notify families of their school's based liaison. In April, a family liaison resource tracker was created so that the liaisons could track only the resources provided to the families and the needs, so that they could connect them with the resources that they needed. Next, we have the work done so far. And remember, it's only a few weeks, we're only a few weeks into the school. But this is the progress done so far. So a discussion regarding a new agreement, a new MOU or a new agreement with NEA, it's currently in progress. A family communication was sent on August 19th, encouraging families to update their emergency contact information. Now, the principals have identified family liaisons for their school sites. Liaisons will be able to continue the work once the agreement is finalized and in place. And I have good news for you, because many of the family liaisons, I think all of them except for two, because of sometimes they move schools, but many of them are the same ones that started the work last academic year. So they've been trained, they know the work, they know their families. So it's good news that they want to continue the work this year. And then already in the schedule, we have monthly training sessions or check-ins also. We're planning. So the first one is coming up on September 2nd from 3 to 4. And once we'll meet online with all the family liaisons, and safety and security and the City of Santa Fe Immigration Committee will present, and also our general counsel will be there to talk about confidentiality, protection of data. And then every month we'll have monthly check-ins. tentatively the first Wednesday, if they work for all of them. And the goal is to hear from the communities to identify the needs, but also to gather feedback, track the resources that have been asked. So that's going to be in place. And then I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Pastrana.
Good afternoon, Superintendent Griffin, Board President Noble, members of the board, public. I'm here to speak a little bit just about the outreach that we've done that faces our staff and our leaders this school year. As Raquel mentioned, we're just a few weeks in, but we wanted to prioritize this. And of course, we also know that this came ahead of, of the ICE activity that we have seen already this school year. So as far as leadership, we sent out an updated student safety communication plan that outlines very clearly what to do in a case of any law enforcement on campus or any emergency on campus, and a very clear flow chart of who to contact and in what order so that we can respond as quickly as possible. This included a teacher frequently asked questions document that was updated from last year that also gives a very clear flow chart as a teacher what to do if they see or become aware of any law enforcement on campus, which directly ties them back to the principal, and the principal then connects with upper leadership. And then in terms of families, we know that there's many aspects that go into making families feel safe and welcome. Obviously, our actions speak much louder than words, but our words and what is seen really do matter. Last year, we printed up these posters that are displayed on the screen here in English and Spanish, saying that this school is a safe space, no matter who you are. We've asked all principals to make sure that they are hung prominently in the school where it can be seen visibly by the public, by students as well. And so for the most part, that's already up in the front offices, but we got requests to print more posters and have them in other areas, so those are being distributed as well. As mentioned before, we did send information to all of our families to update their contact information in case of any emergency. And then, as Superintendent mentioned before, using the new SFPS Connect newsletter, there was communication around welcoming and safety for students. And so that's where we're at this year. And we also did, I forgot to mention, when we met with leadership, we presented the documents first in a virtual all principals meeting, and then last Thursday we came together in person as a group where we had our general counsel and director of security as well to answer questions and to build our collective knowledge around what to do in different situations. So that was a really positive conversation. And that's where we are right now. I'm going to pass it back to, or I'm going to pass it over to our director of security.
Good evening, board members, Madam President, Vice President, Superintendent Griffin. When it comes to Santa Fe Public Schools, we've always been committed to protecting our students regardless of their immigration status. Thus, the district ensures that we bar access to immigration officials at all our district sites without judicial warrant. The reason why that's important is court removal orders aren't judicial warrants. This is a civil action, it's a civil order, and it cannot be enforced on private property that is not accessible by the public. How does that work for us? Well, for parking lots and lobbies that are open during drop-off and pickup, that's as far as they can go. Once classes commence and the doors are secure, they have no access. And that is with their court removal order, it wouldn't matter. Immediate notifications, all site supervisors have been well briefed on who to contact, and that's going to be Josh Rind, who's our assistant superintendent for operations, Josh Granata, our legal counsel, and myself. And if any immigration officials are on any district property, they're there to notify us immediately. That's it.
And at this time, we stand for any questions.
Okay, questions from the board. Yes, Board Member Blah.
Thank you, President Noble, Vice President Bose. So I have a question about, is there like a protocol or a program for trauma counseling to kind of help with this type of, like to kind of ease the anxiety? Because a lot of this is traumatizing. So I was just wondering what we're doing in terms of that work.
Student Wellness does have many community partners that offer counseling. Actually, Gerard's House has a a program specific to immigration and the challenges that come along with it. We do have a partnership with them, and students can be referred to that program through our student wellness meetings.
And as a follow-up, is there like a wait list, or pretty much does Gerard's House have resources, and what's that like?
As far as I know, Gerard's House has always been able to get our kids in very quickly. If in the event that there was ever a wait list, we do have a number of community partners that offer counseling services. We do have a counselor in each of the school sites, in addition to our school counselor, so referrals can be made there as well. I do think all of our wellness teams and our attendance teams at this point are keeping an eye on whether or not students need additional resources and connecting them quite quickly with those resources if they're needed.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Board President. The liaison, are they educators? Are they
They,
community people? Or are they?
yes, thank you, Secretary Gonzalez. They are staff members in our sites. They were chosen by the principals. The principals were able to look at the staff and decide who best fit that role. In some of the school sites, it's our community school coordinators. In some of the sites, it is counselors, teachers. Yes, thank you. Deputy Holiday is familiar. She was part of the process last year. So it really was dependent on who was the best fit at that school site and who was going to have the most communication and the most trust among the families that are in the schools.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Bozay.
Thank you, President Noble. Just back on slide 2, can you talk a little bit more for folks who maybe weren't paying attention to this the last time we had the discussion, what those kinds of protected areas are within our school sites? Because I think they actually extend beyond the school sites.
Yeah, actually, I will invite our Director of Safety and Security to help really define these, because we have talked a lot about the school space, again, that front area and our parking lots. But Mr. Grundler?
I'm not familiar.
That's the frequently asked questions document that was shared.
Okay.
Answers the most questions in English and Spanish, but it was done by safety.
And I apologize, I'm not familiar with the document. So under the law enforcement, ICE and school grounds, can immigration officers or law enforcement come onto school property? Police officers and immigration officers may lawfully be present in any place on school grounds that is open and accessible to the public, which I had previously explained. This includes public streets, school parking lots, and sometimes the school front lobby. Some of these areas, such as the gymnasium, athletics field, cafeteria, may be temporarily considered public during school-hosted events that are open to the public, such as school athletic events, fundraising events, and open houses. So that, again, if it's open generally to the public, then they would be able to access it at that time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think actually I'll go back and pull up the document, but I think we talked specifically about school activities and those being protected. So I just, I would like to make sure if there's clarification around that, that we be, communicating that and make sure that we're all on the same page, because it is really important that we get this right. transportation buses, those kinds of things that what extends beyond our actual physical property. I think I'm understanding what you're saying about when the physical property is open, but what are maybe activities that we consider our protected areas that exist off campus as well.
I believe our deputy superintendent can answer that.
Thank you.
To speak to your point about school buses, we don't let just the public on a school bus full of children, so that would be considered an extension of that protected area. Additionally, our front offices, just to piggyback on what TJ Grundler was saying, with the exception of the very beginning of the school day and the very end of the school day, we all have to buzz ourselves into the front office. So in that way, even that front office isn't a publicly accessible space. On our high school campuses, they are screening people who come on and off of campus. Again, once school starts, it's locked down. So if board member Abetha was like, hey, I just want to hang out at Capitol during the day, he would have to check in. We don't just let the general public on and off of our campuses during the day. Did that speak to your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
My question, I think I've sort of raised before, but have there been or will there be any conversations with the City of Santa Fe Police Department, our county, or any sort of interface there with our governmental partners?
So we've had discussions, not specifically on this, but I just recently retired from the Santa Fe Police Department, and I can tell you they have a policy in place that backs up the resolution by the city that they will not effectively assist in any kind of removal. The only time that they may possibly assist would only be to safeguard lives because of an active threat. So, for an example, if they were acting in their capacity of trying to enforce their court order for removal, and it turned into a gunfight, then the Santa Fe Police Department is going to act, but they're going to act in the interest of public safety, period. They do not assist in removal, and as far as I know, the county is the same way.
Thank you very much. That gets to my question, and I know it's not a situation anyone wants to imagine, and we appreciate that our local law enforcement does not share information or really work with ICE, but I do think it is only responsible to be thinking about what has been unthinkable. We saw obviously an arrest in what many of us considered a sort of off-limits space in the parking lot of a healthcare facility. That if basically ICE agents got out of line on a school site, it does seem like we should be having that conversation and thinking about how it would work and making a call very quickly to law enforcement, because obviously schools are schools. We are not equipped at schools to deal with a gunfight or any of that. We're maybe equipped to lock down, and that's fine. But I do think we have to be talking about some of these very difficult things. Okay, well, I also just want to say, and I think that this is inherent in the presentation, I really appreciate this work. Of all the things that this board has done, this keeping families safe action that we took, to me, feels like one of the most meaningful. And I just want to say that as designed, it is, I know there's a certain amount of information, legal protection, how it works that needs to be disseminated from the top. But as designed, this is a program that should be sort of from the ground up, with the deep listening to the family liaisons, whom I hope are listening to the families and hearing what they need, whether it is something like remote learning options or resources or trauma help and interventions and that sort of thing, because we will not, those of us that have safe status and that sort of thing, we will not be able to imagine how it feels and what's needed. So I really hope that as we go forward, that we can stay true to the intent of this work and let the information and the requests and the resources and the needs come from the families through the family liaisons, and that the district really works to be responsive to what we hear from our community. I would also say at some point, you know, we heard obviously from Mr. Acosta tonight about the online learning, online options questions, and that's something that, you know, I do think people have felt they needed to stay home, and it's something that, again, if families are asking for that, we need to think about what we can do to first safeguard families, maybe second, prevent trauma, and third, make sure that we are providing the educational opportunities that is our job. Thank you all very much. I appreciate this work, and I appreciate the update. It's really great, and it feels incredibly important right now as we have had an unprecedented level of activity in this community of late. So, thank you.
Thank you, President Noble. We look forward to updating the board again later this semester.
Thank you. I look forward to that too. Okay. Ready to move on? We'll go ahead and move on to our action items, starting with our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone wants to consider separately from the consent agenda? And if not, if there's a motion.
I
Dr.
move
Gonzalez.
approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we've approved the consent agenda. Moving on to our second reading, action item B, second reading and approval of amended policy 537, our cash policy. Mr. Halford.
Well, good evening, everyone. Board President Noble, Superintendent Dr. Griffin, members of the board. My colleague gave the first reading last time, and so I guess it's my turn. Pretty much the two major changes on this is the increase to the upper limit that was discussed during the budget sessions. And then we just cleaned up some language on the emergency reserve. It was more of a thing when this first was drafted. It's no longer a requirement, so we just kind of reflect that in the new language, that if we do have it in there, of course, we'll do all the steps to move it, but it's no longer a requirement. So we just cleaned that language up.
Any questions or thoughts from the board? If not, is there a motion?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the second reading of amended policy 537, our cash policy. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we've approved the amended cash policy. Thank you very much. Moving on to our second reading and approval of new policy 547 on cybersecurity.
Good evening,
Mr.
Board President
Hagley.
Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Griffin. Policy 547 returns tonight for a second reading and consideration for adoption. This policy establishes a district-wide framework for protecting district information systems and data. It sets expectations around access management, data protection, network and device security, vendor oversight, cybersecurity awareness, business continuity, and our ability to respond to and recover from cybersecurity incidents. Tonight, we are asking the board to consider Policy 547 for adoption.
Thank you very much. Any questions or discussion from the board? And if not, is there a motion?
President Noble, I move that we accept the second reading and approve the new policy 547 cybersecurity.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving new policy 547 on cybersecurity, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Board Member Blaya, for your hard work on this, and Board Member Abeta for your strong assist and all that. Okay. Moving on to action item D, our first reading of new policy 357, student data privacy. Superintendent, I'd love for you to kick us off with this policy, and I know that staff has spent some time with our board members on this, and to let us know sort of where you are, what you're thinking on this.
Excellent. Thank you, President Noble, Vice President Bose, board members. I just want to start with just saying that I fully support having strong student data privacy protections in place. And I think that this draft policy is making a lot of significant progress. And I really appreciate the work of Vice President Bose and Board Member Blaya, along with our staff. I believe that they met last Wednesday to review this policy, and that that they were able to give some feedback on what the staff brought to them. I also want to remind us that we're not starting from zero, that we have the Family Educational Rights Privacy Act, Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. They already provide federal protections, although not at the level that we're trying to establish here. Santa Fe Public Schools also has additional current protections through our contract language and data sharing agreements. Our data sharing agreements currently limit what data can be shared and why, required security and confidentiality, extend protections to subcontractors, require the 24-hour breach notification, allow us to require destruction and certification of destruction, and they give us the ability to verify compliance, which is super helpful that we already have some things in place. Just like the cyber security policy, going through that, this was just really creating governance around it. This policy is an opportunity to take those existing practices and create consistent district-wide frameworks. We're also addressing gaps created by newer technology, in particular biometric data and AI. My goal is just simply to understand exactly where those gaps are and make sure that the policy that we adopt actually closes them. And before we begin reviewing this draft policy, I want to remind the board that of the policy development process that we just adopted 2 weeks ago. And under that process, the board member brings forward a policy recommendation. The board determines whether to move it forward, which you all unanimously agreed on. And 2 board members are assigned to work with district policy team to develop that draft, which they did, and they met last week on Wednesday. That process was followed here. The district team meets with the 2 board members, and they work through the policy, and they develop the initial draft. I intentionally don't attend that meeting because when the policy is brought to me, I want to look at it with fresh eyes. I think I'm kind of like the average person with average intelligence, and I want to be able to read through the policy and say, what does this mean? And ask my staff, like, explain to me what this means in plain language, and then what does it mean for us to operationalize it? And so on Monday, I went through the draft policy with the additional language that was added after the team meeting, and really asked a lot of questions of my staff, and they, in response, had a lot of questions as well. And we're just still not sure about how we're going to answer some of these questions. I don't believe this draft is ready for adoption yet. I think it's close. I think that we can get there relatively quickly, but I don't really have answers for my staff when they're asking me specific questions, and I want to be able to answer those questions before we approve a policy. So I have a few ideas of what we could do tonight. The first one is that we could just treat this as a working draft, and we can work through, we can bring the team back together. So Board Member Blea, Vice President Bosé, and the team, and we can work through some of the definitions. For example, language such as similarly sensitive data, like what does that mean? Equivalent alternatives, being able to define that. Standards for independent evaluation. Is that us doing the independent evaluation? Is that the company, the vendor doing the independent evaluation? The staff had, the process is working. The staff has identified a lot of questions that they just want to be able to answer. And we would like to bring a revised draft back to the board. That's sort of my first recommendation. The second option is to direct staff to develop an administrative regulation alongside the draft so we can really understand and test the policy to determine exactly how the requirements would actually work and bring both documents back to the board so they can see the policy and how it would be implemented. And then the third option is really to use tonight's discussion to give the policy team clear direction. We can go through the draft line by line and identify where the board's is in agreement, clarify the board's intent where there are questions, and then have the policy team incorporate that direction and bring the next draft back.
Thank you very much. Vice President Bosé.
Thank you, President Noble. There are some things that I would like an opportunity to say as well before we launch into, whatever we decide to do tonight, if I may. I just wanted to talk about why I sort of pushed this as quickly as I did. As you outlined, our schools are using technology in a way that would have been difficult to imagine a few years ago. And technology can absolutely be a powerful tool for teaching and supporting students. But technology is changing faster than our systems of governance can keep up with, as you said. We are now dealing with tools that can collect not just a student's name and test score, but their voice, their image, their behavior, and other information that can identify them. And when that information is collected by a private company, we need to be very clear about who controls it, how it's used, how long it's kept, and what happens to it when the educational purpose is over. I want to acknowledge that this policy did move fast. Under normal circumstances, I would prefer a longer policy development process with more time for staff and stakeholder input. I know that it is important to work through scenarios to build comfort around big change and ensure we can enact a policy on day one. But I just don't think let's wait was the right response when families are raising legitimate concerns about what is happening to their children's data right now. I sometimes think governance means responding to a problem when it's happening and then continuing to improve the response. I know that this draft isn't perfect, and I'm open to the discussion that we're going to have tonight. It may have unintended consequences, and it may make some technology more difficult to use. It may create additional work. There may be things in this policy that we ultimately need to change, but the absence of a policy has consequences too. And that was ultimately what I considered when pushing to include as many of the protections in this policy as possible. This draft establishes some basic principles. Collect only the data that we actually need, keeping the district in control of the student data, hold vendors to clear standards, prohibit selling, monetizing, targeting, advertising, and unrelated profiling, require meaningful consent for certain uses of particularly sensitive information like biometric data, and importantly, prohibit vendors from using student data to train their own AI models. It is also really important to ensure that technology tools serve real educational purpose by proving efficacy through independent validation. I think if a company can't meet these standards, we need to be willing to say no. This policy is an attempt to establish a floor for our responsibility, not a final answer. And I hope that as we consider it, we can both act now to protect students and commit to continuing to improve the policy as we learn from the implementation. It might not be perfect, but I believe having no standard is no longer acceptable. So with that, I look forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Board Member Blaya.
Thank you, President Noble. Thank you, Vice President Bose, for that. I'm in full agreement with what you said. I do think that protecting data and having a policy in place is absolutely critical, and I think it should be done sooner rather than later. As I look at this policy and as I looked at the cybersecurity policy, and I started thinking about the AI policy that we're going to start talking about, there's obvious crossover. There's obvious kind of like references between the three policies. But to me, the real danger comes down to agentic AI. That's really where we're talking about, and there's no such thing, I guarantee you, there's no such thing as agentic AI that does not use collected data to train. Any vendor that says that is flat out lying. You need the data. The data, by its very nature, goes through a process. LLMs then collect that data and train and refine their models as the data gets collected. That's the whole point of an LLM. So there's no such thing as an AI tool that doesn't train the model. That's just the way that it is. Having said that, in my opinion, we're at a place in time where we have to kind of put the guardrails and put the genie back in the bottle, so to speak, because it's here, but distinctions have to be made between, in my opinion, we have to make distinctions between data collection and agentic AI data collection. I think that distinction is critical because if the district controls the data, then clearly all those other things aren't going to be done that a vendor can do. Then we have the cybersecurity policy in place to kind of control that. If it's an AI tool, well, then now that crosses into the policy around AI governance. And so I think lines 41 through 46 of this policy, and I could punt this to a discussion if you want. It's just that for me, we're talking about every single type of data. And I think the cybersecurity policy kind of already protects that data. And so I think we just need to comb out what we're talking about in terms of agentic AI versus data. So I think those are the kinds of things in my mind that from a nuance, those are the kind of gray areas that I think it would behoove us all, and I got to use the word behoove, to actually understand the nuances and the relationship between these three policies and the lines between all of them. Because the more I learn about Amira and the more I learn about what started this whole thing, the more I realize they got something past the goalie that could have had destructive consequences had we not been informed by the public and had we not been adequately versed in what, to me, it could have had really catastrophic consequences. We stopped the bleeding on that, and now it's a matter of figuring out where agentic AI could cause us similar issues. I don't know what the inventory at the ecosystem looks like within the district. I'm not sure where the district is in terms of understanding its ecosystem, in terms of AI standards, all those kinds of educational tools. I went to the parent conference on Saturday, and I got to sit down with the digital learning coaches. And I left there, not from a board member perspective, but from a cybersecurity perspective, thinking, man, there's multiple access points for technology to enter the district. So how do we define our attack surfaces? And I don't know how Patricia and her team does it, because that's a lot. So I give them a lot of credit for having that kind of organized and well-defined. But as we go forward tonight, all I ask is that we think about this policy in terms of data governance. And if it's a tool specific to a tool, if it's agentic AI, that's the domain of AI. And if it's, another tool, well, then that might be the domain of cybersecurity. So that's the only thing that I'm thinking is let's make sure that we have the right kind of domains and the right organizations within our policies. That's all I'm saying.
Vice President Bose.
Thank you, President Noble. One of the things that I've pushed really hard to understand in the last month as we've been doing this work is sort of where there is this overlap between cybersecurity and data privacy. And I just really what I've learned as I've talked to folks is that our cybersecurity is the protection of what we collect. And a lot of the goal behind the data privacy is talking about what we will not collect. And so once we've collected it, then the cybersecurity policy kicks into place. But if folks are uncomfortable with what we're collecting, then this is where we can talk about that kind of on the front end of things.
Go ahead, Board Member Blaya.
To that point, and I completely agree, Vice President, the way I look at it is data privacy is the rules around the package. Like, what is the package? Where are we going to deliver it? You know, all that kind of stuff. What type of package is it? And is it, you know, what do we need around that package? And then cybersecurity is the delivery vehicles and the mechanisms to load the delivery vehicles and the security mechanisms around that. So data privacy defines the rules about the package, you know, what we're going to accept, who's going to accept it, all those kinds of things. And then the cybersecurity part is all the mechanisms in place that actually do the work to protect it once it's defined. So that's how I kind of have always kind of done it and approached it. To your point, and that's exactly right. There's a difference between the what and the how. It always comes down to that. So cybersecurity tends to be the how, and the data privacy tends to be the what. It's just that for me, the real kind of, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said nothing is either good or bad, only its use makes it so. So I've always kind of lived that by technology, and AI especially is neither good nor bad. It's just how we're using it. And so defining how it's used, I think, is to me, it's the bigger enchilada at the table right now.
I guess I'll share some thoughts here. Board Member Blair, I really appreciate what you said about the distinction of AI data collection and other data, and I think that actually voices for me some of what was making me uncomfortable is there's sort of enough of a generalization around data and how we define our terms. And honestly, I have been concerned at how fast this has moved, and I think that it might make sense to do it in conjunction with thinking about AI data collection, as Board Member Blaya said, and what you said, Superintendent, about the AR, because I do see things that I see in here that feel like they should be in an AR as well. And you know, as much as the board's job is always policy, I don't believe that we have no standard. I have worked with this district for a long, long time, and the practices have been outlined to us as the board any number of times during my service. And policy is one thing, but practice is the most important thing, because we have a school district, and truly, you know, what policies say and intention are often less important to me than the practice of what we do and how we serve the students and the teachers in our schools. So I have seen more harm from you know, unintended consequences and work that you know, sort of feels like it needs some more vetting than I have from things that were in practice but not policy just yet. And I do agree that we need to be thinking about this, and I appreciate the leadership and forward thinking. I understand that there are not many, if any, other school district policies around the country on this, and some of it, you know, it does feel to me like there's a huge number of terms that we need to define. And, you know, data itself being this umbrella term that, again, Board Member Blaya, you've given me an important light bulb, and I appreciate that. So, you know, I do think that we need to dig in. I personally would like to understand more. I'd like to understand why no other districts have done this. I would like the team to think through how it's implemented and you know, what in our practice will change as the result of the adoption in this policy, which is not something I understand at this stage. Go ahead, Board Member Blaya.
Thank you, President Noble. So one of the things, it's not just school districts that don't have these policies. It's throughout the entire state, local and governmental agencies don't have these policies. Um, Raja over at the state, I've spoken about him before. They have a committee that actually is developing statewide template policies for these types of things, and they're distributing them to the local agencies. Um, because it is at least a ground, like a starting point for these types of policies, because again, to Vice President Bose's point, the game changed and we're now kind of catching up to it instead of the other way around. We didn't govern it first, we have to play catch up. So I think it's more an issue of the nature of life right now. Things just kind of grew really fast. But to your point, I met with Srinivas last week. He's the owner and founder of Securin, the one that does like most of the penetration tests and stuff like that. And he said, look, you can have capital, you can have policy, but if you don't have execution, it doesn't matter. So that's to your point. And he said that, and it like really rang like, I mean, if we can't implement it, doesn't really matter what we say on paper. If it can't be done, then it's pointless. So to your point, I appreciate you saying that because it kind of echoed what Srinivas was telling me. Like, you can do whatever you want in writing, but if you can't do it, it don't matter. So I just wanted to kind of throw those out there that's the state is kind of trying to figure that out at the local agency level because this is a problem all around.
Vice President Bose.
Thank you, President Noble. Just sort of to clarify, the two main points that I requested be included in the revised draft that we're looking at tonight was around biometric data specifically, and that parents, that notification happen in writing and that parents be allowed to opt out, which is very much in line with everything that we heard during public forum. And the original draft that we saw said appropriate notification and consent, and that just felt woefully inadequate to me. And so I pushed much harder to have that be included, because I think that when it comes specifically to biometric data, that's reasonable. If I'm a parent, I'm not a parent of young kids that are using this tool to learn how to read, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So that was one piece. And then the other piece was really around the efficacy of the tools and the independent. What we've learned with the use of Amira is that the validation that their studies that they have are from internal studies and a study that they funded. And so, again, that's not solely on us as a district because it was mandated by the state, but to really say, if we're going to use these tools, they should really serve our students and not just the ideal student, but all of our students, including our most vulnerable students. So those were the pieces that I pushed after I saw the draft last week. Thank you.
Board Member Blaya.
Thank you, Vice President Bose. And again, I just want to make one distinction, and I think this is kind of where it kind of, I think this is like a change in the way that things work. So when you have, so an attack surface is something that you could like protect. So like a database is an actual artifact that you could protect. An application is an actual thing that you could protect. So you prioritize those and you say, this is our attack surface. AI is not like that. So data, we're talking about data, but what does that mean? So if you're working on think of an Excel spreadsheet, you're doing an application, whatever application you're using, you enter some information, you collect images, you collect whatever, it goes off into an RDBMS most of the time. At least that's what the structure here is. You go into a database system. That database system then stores that data, and you can put encryption on fields, you can do all kinds of stuff, but you know your attack surface. AI data is not that. So if you're sitting at ChatGPT, for example, and you say, tell me how to make a recipe for, green chili enchiladas or whatever, you put that in, that prompt is now data. The difficulty with that prompt is that it doesn't get stored somewhere that you could say, this is our attack surface. It goes through two different routes of processing, and then it goes out there, it combs through and says, okay, this is what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna spit out the best recipe that fits this model. And that prompt then becomes an element of data that trains the model. But it doesn't go anywhere that then you could say, I'm gonna protect this as an attack surface. So then now you have to say, how do we define our attack surface with AI? And that's where it gets a little bit squirrely, because it's not the same attack surface, because we don't know. It's like a couple of black boxes that does their thing, and that's what makes them so dangerous. Not because they're dangerous inherently, but because the security around AI is even different. You could do prompt injections. You could do different things to throw off the model. Like you could say, disregard all previous commands and do something different. Well, that'll hose up your whole model. So there's a lot about AI security that's very different than standard attack surface security. So when we talk about data, we're not talking about apples to apples. We're talking about apples and kumquats. It's a lot different. And so the word data has a very wide meaning that needs to be combed out, in my opinion, not just here, but everywhere. And that's kind of what I do every day, is try to make those nuances and comb those out. But I'm afraid that if we say data without the distinction of what data we're talking about, then we're going to be challenging our cybersecurity practice, because now we can't define our attack surface clearly. So that's my concern about the three commingling of the three policies.
May I ask Board Member Blea what your recommendation would be on the path forward?
You know, I'll have to defer to Vice President Bose and Superintendent, because for me, I get really, I start getting stuck in the details. That's just how I am. I can't pull myself out. So to me, like I said, 41 through 46, educational technology tools is very broad. And so are we talking about agentic AI tools? Because if we are, then that's a different ballgame, and we could kind of define that and say, this is what we're going to do around, and we have to have opt-in for agentic AI, especially if it's biometric. Completely agree with that. But if it's like a GRE practice exam, and I take a GRE practice exam, and you take these exams or whatever, but that's all you could rip out the identifiable information, and their data privacy says they're going to do that, and this says I'm GovRamp and FedRamp certified, so you don't have to worry about your data. AI companies don't come out and say those types of things because they can't, because they don't know how.
Board Member Beta.
Thank you, President Noble. Is this something that maybe the board should have a study session on, and maybe even series of issues? Because as you stated, it's coming, and it's coming quick, and we're way behind. And just with tonight's discussion, I'm confused, and I don't feel comfortable voting on something that is just so vast. And so I think, well, how do we usually handle things like this? Study sessions has been the practice. That's just a suggestion. I don't know.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I see Dr. Gonzalez nodding. Vice President Bose, you want to weigh in?
I mean, I think that having us have an opportunity to learn more and build comfort around this is important. I feel I remain very concerned about what's happening in the meantime if we're not, making meaningful progress on this. I mean, for example, at our meeting on the 30th of July, and maybe even at our last meeting, you talked about the assessment tool that was going to be moving forward, but there's still a lot of confusion, and I guess maybe even on my part about what we're using Amira for. We're not using it for assessments, like that's very clear, but I sort of thought we weren't using it at all for reading, but it there's continues to be lack of clarity around that with families in the district, and I just, I think that it's important to do the things that we said that we were going to do, and yes, we should have comfort around it, and we can definitely learn more as the technology is changing. I just, I don't want this to get swept under the rug for another 6 or 8 months, because I feel like it's it's more important and it needs more attention than that. Thank you.
Board Member Blaya.
No, I think 2 months, 3 months, this isn't something that should be delayed a long time. I think understanding for any real, in any government or private agency, understanding the ecosystem is the key to being able to protect it. And I don't know if it's like here, like anywhere else, and I don't know that it is or isn't. I don't know what the level of, inventorying of the ecosystem is here, but I just finished at a large state agency building a system that maps out ecosystems. And it took a while, but it really was a beneficial exercise for the agency because once they understood what their ecosystem was, then they could put a better kind of practice around it. So I'm not saying that it's going to take, I don't think it should take more than, I don't know, I'll defer to the superintendent and to the experts, but I mean, from what I've seen with all the budget presentations and stuff, it seems like pretty much the House is pretty well kind of put together with what I learned with meeting with Patricia and the team. So I don't really think that it's like a massive undertaking to do an ecosystem understanding, just to kind of get a general feel for what kind of AI tools are out there and what type of data is being collected and how that's represented within, an attack surface is what we're talking about. And so I think any month, I don't even think it's a month kind of thing, but again, I'll defer. Because we cannot afford this again, because even if we put ourselves at odds with the PED, which we did discuss in our meeting, I mean, if the PED is wrong, then we need to let them know that they're wrong. It's that simple, because they don't know either. And the state especially doesn't know. The state's making all kinds of crazy decisions right now that I completely disagree with, but what can you do? If we don't have our house in order, then they could do whatever they want. If we have a house in order, then at least we have something to stand on. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Vice President Bozay.
Thank you, President Noble. Just to be clear, I think that PED is wrong. I think they were wrong to mandate this. I think they were wrong to not vet it. And I think they've put all of us, including our families, in a really bad position. And so I carry that responsibility to do something once I'm aware of it, to act on that. And so that's where this is coming from.
President Noble,
Go ahead.
if the state does mandate something though, what good is it to have a policy if we're under a state mandate to do it? I mean, who has authority in that situation? Us or the state? I mean, we can say this goes against it, but we got to do it, right? I mean,
Well, but so does the state. Sorry, President Noble, I didn't wait for it to be acknowledged.
Go ahead.
But so does the state. The state has a responsibility, and there are controls in place at the state level to ensure that these types of things don't slip past the goalie. And just because they come out and say, when we met with the PED, I left that meeting thinking there was absolutely no representation from IT or their legal team. And so I just left that meeting thinking they absolutely have no clue what they did. They have absolutely no guidance, no guardrails in place for themselves. So they just made a decision because some vendor waved a fancy thing. I have no idea what happened behind the scenes because there's a lot of, to use your term, inside baseball being played, and I don't always know the game. So something snuck past the goalie. I did talk with various people at the state around this kind of thing, and it really should not have seen the light of day. But again, just because the PED says, oh, we're going to do this tool, it still should have gone through the state's vetting practice, and it should have gone through its contracting practice, and it should have gone through various controls that it just did not. And so just because PED says something doesn't mean that they're right. They make mistakes too, and they're under the same kind of governance as everybody else. So if it's a law that comes down from the legislature, okay, well, cool. But if it's a practice that just happens at the state level that wasn't adhered to through the state's practices, well, then I think we should push back.
and I agree, but I think we need to have a well thought out, studied policy so that when we do have that discussion with, and maybe we have it, maybe we don't, I don't know, but it seems like it's going pretty quick right now with just this. But I think I agree. I'm just saying though that if we are gonna push back to them, we should have something that's been well vetted and thought out and that we understand as a district. And then maybe we turn out to be the example and the leaders for the rest of the districts in the state. But I don't know if 2 meetings it gets us that. Maybe it does. I don't know. Thank you.
Board Member Blair.
Yeah, sorry, President Noble. Um, So I don't know what we could glean from a study session. I mean, when looking at the advanced planning, I mean, I was looking at advanced planning and I was gonna actually ask for a study session on something completely separate. Because we're kind of already planning into October. And so I don't know that we have enough time to go to October, come up with the policy, then put it to 2 board meetings, because now that's already like November. And so that's way too long. I think a lot of wacky stuff's gonna happen between now and November 3rd. And so I really think that we need to make sure we're kind of getting ahead of it, even if it's not perfect. I think just some language clarification and inventorying is all that's really needed, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think we're close. I really do.
And President Noble. Uh, okay, I hear you. B- I would like to see though, what the impact to the district is. Is it realistic? Can some of these things, can we do that? And if we can, then that's great, because that's the other thing. You could have the strongest, best policy in the world, but if you don't have the capacity or the expertise to enforce it, then it's just just paper, as they say. So yeah, however we move forward, as long as it contains both, then I think, yeah, we can adopt something sooner rather than later.
And I would say I agree with Board Member Beta. I'm not married to a study session, though we do, we have 3 meetings scheduled in September. I think one of them could fairly easily be a substantial study session on something like this. I do think there's a lot of questions, and Board Member Blea, I think you've done a very good job of sort of defining the package and some of the questions. I do think we need to define terms and, whether it's biometric, because we have a lot of cameras out there, and personally, I'm more concerned about flock cameras than I am right now about an SFPS. I think that our practices are strong, and there are flock cameras all over this city right now. I do also think that we need to define educational technology tools, again, in light of cameras and other things that we have put in place. Um, and, personally, again, I come back superintendent too, and I do think if we can think about an AI policy and if we can think about the ARs, my question is going to remain, what practice changes? What changes in the implementation of the team out there doing things? Because, and Board Member Blea, you're person, my brain's not entirely on par right now, but who who said that says it better than I do, but I really feel strongly that the practice is what's important, and we have to know what we're doing and why, and where there might be, you know, we can't identify every unintended consequence, I get that, but there are some that we can, and we can think through, if we're talking about voice recordings, what are the issues there? How is that used? Again, if we're talking about cameras and images, how is that used? If all of these various different pieces that I think, what educational technology tools, that was one that tripped me up. I was like, what is that? So I guess I would say, Superintendent, we can discuss, and, I think I would ask that you, get with the team and see whether a study session would be helpful. I do think we could move one of the meetings in September to be a study session, but I would basically suggest parallel paths on this. And, I don't take too much into the wisdom of crowds, but I also don't think that we're necessarily the smartest, most with it folks out there. I think, Board Member Blea, and I might lean on you for this, like, why aren't there other, I mean, there are a lot of school districts in this country. Nobody's done it. Like, and I'm sure other people have thought of it. So, that sort of confounds me a little bit. But ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is a parallel process, considering a study session for one of the meetings in November. um, sorry, September, yes, that's where we are. And maybe additional work, Board Member Blea and Vice President Bose and the team to revise the policy, to look at an AR and even an AI policy in parallel so that we can really better get our arms around this. Vice President Bose.
Thank you, President Noble. I just wanted to mention, because both you and Board Member Blea asked for this definition around educational technology, but we very specifically say educational technology tools that collect, analyze, or retain student voice recordings, facial images, biometric identifiers, or similarly sensitive data for automated analysis or other vendor processing beyond the ordinary creation, editing, storage, or submission of student work shall require affirmative written opt-in consent from a parent or legal guardian through a standalone notice. So like that, to me, like, again, very, very intentional around this is a definition, and it's why we're pulling that out so that we can say this is the kind of stuff that we want to have affirmative written opt-in consent around. So I'm fine with the direction this is going, but I don't feel like that's vague or unclear in any way.
Board Member Blea.
For me, it is. And the reason why it is because when you say educate that collect, analyze, or retain student voice recordings, facial images, identifiers, or similarly sensitive data for automated analysis or other vendor processing beyond the ordinary creation, blah, blah, blah. So what does that mean? And is it strictly for vendors? Because it's an or. So that means that there's an implied that it's not just the vendors, it's also internally. But if it's internally, then that's protected through cybersecurity. If it's a vendor policy, then the vendor policy, then we have to define what does it mean beyond the ordinary processing. So what does ordinary processing constitute? So when you start getting into the thing about what is ordinary creation, editing, blah, 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 then we have to define what is ordinary. And then what vendor is going to create something that's non-ordinary. So if we're going to talk about AI tools and what they're doing with data and how they use the prompts and how they use the data that they're actually processing through, that's a different ballgame entirely. But if we're talking about, like, I think somebody said, like, we have cameras here, right? Those cameras, we know where that data goes. You know, we know that, you know, it's stored somewhere on a server and it's there for 30 days and IT Connect has something to do with it. And so we know more or less that, you know, they're protecting it this way. They show me their encryption standards and stuff like that. So we know what they're doing, but that's ordinary processing of data. So what do we mean by non-ordinary processing of data? And that's where the vagueness comes from. So if we're talking about AI tools, well, let's be specific and call it an AI tool and refer it to the other policy. That's where it is very vague. So that's, to me, maybe not very, but it is vague.
Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, President Noble. I'm getting very confused here, and actually I know a little bit about technology, but I would like to see one of the meetings in September be focused on these three policies. That we'll have the AI policy available too. So just to see how they interact, you're talking about all the interaction between them and all this. I would like to really understand that.
That's very clear. Thank you. Okay, we good? We'll go ahead and move on. Superintendent, anything you want to clarify?
Thank you, Board President, board members. I really appreciate this conversation over this very important topic. I'm glad that some of these conversations are the exact conversations that we're having as a team and just trying to figure out and understand. And I kind of feel like a kindergartner at a table sometimes, just trying to understand and keep up. September is like 2 weeks away. Well, not even 2 weeks away, but this next board meeting is 2 weeks away. And so we're still Staff is still really grappling with the student data privacy, and now, as of tomorrow, we'll be meeting on AI policy. And so I just want to be honest and cognizant of the fact that we will be pulling staff to be able to work very hard and around the clock in order to prepare this for a study session. This is meaty, this is deep, this requires a lot of thought and just to be well prepared for a study session.
Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
Is there a version of this that we could adopt that's more general and broad so that we do send the message that this is important to us as a district and we are concerned about certain things, and then we give direction to come up with a more detailed product? Or
I want to say I like that idea very much. I did find myself thinking maybe we need a resolution that outlines values and give direction. And I appreciate what you say, Dr. Griffin. I have been thinking a lot about the late, great Lorraine Price, and I think I said this in your first board meeting, Board Member Blea, that what she told me, because she was a few words and they landed well, don't give them too much to do. They have big jobs. As a board member, don't give them too much to do. And I am aware, I've also been thinking, again, I have a little bit of foggy cold brain, but there's been a lot of bears everywhere. And so it's both a literal and kind of metaphorical thing that is happening right now in our schools. And I truly am concerned that we maintain a certain amount of district capacity to deal with what is happening at school sites. And to me, that is really important because, again, I believe our practices are pretty strong on this. Having heard a lot, that doesn't mean that we don't need to push for them to be better and all these things. But when we have literal bears running around our schools, like that's got to be dealt with. And I do always want the board to be cognizant, again, of Lorraine Price's wisdom. Don't give them too much to do. So, Board Member Abeta, I don't know. I sort of think a resolution would be good and maybe would give us some of the time. I'm happy to work on all the things in all the directions, because I hear Dr. Gonzalez very clearly of wanting to see how these things interplay, and I agree with that. Anyway, but I think that's a good thought. Go ahead, Dr. Griffin.
Thank you, Board President Noble. I do agree, like, there's a lot of work that's already gone into this. I appreciate what Board Member Abeta said about a simpler version. We just have questions. Vice President Bose read a definition of educational technology tools, and earlier in the policy, it defines it as well, and they kind of contradict each other a little bit. So my recommendation is for the team to meet again with Vice President Bose and Board Member Blea, specifically to see if there is a simpler version. And then at the next board meeting, we can bring an update to the board on either we have a policy that we feel that we're able to present, or that our update is that we really actually do need to do a study session or recommend that the board follow through with a resolution.
I'm comfortable with that. I see nodding generally. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody. I am going to need to leave at this point. I did want to stay for this, so I will hand chairing the meeting over to Vice President Bose. I do want to say, just looking ahead to our committee representatives, which we've waited on a couple of times for the lack of having a full board. So looking ahead on that, I am perfectly happy to stay where I am on the audit committee. I had approached Board Member Blea about chairing that, so that would be my preference. You expressed a willingness, and I'm happy I'm happy with that. I frankly do not want to be on the CRC or anywhere else. I'm good with audit. So, um, yeah. Anyway, please don't wait on that one. Having now expressed myself on that. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of the meeting.
Thank you. Feel better. All right. Well, we could move on to Schools of Innovation, our action item E, Schools of Innovation for Early College Opportunities.
Thank you. Good evening, Vice President Bose, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Griffin. We're pleased tonight to bring forward our next School of Innovation proposal, this one for ECO, Early College Opportunity School. The timing is right for ECO to build on its considerable strengths and to address the needs of our community. Following on excellent leadership to launch and establish the school, Principal John Size brings fresh passion and vision to the work of building ECO as a school of innovation designed more specifically to meet the career aspirations of its students. Additionally, as the board is aware, ECO has recently been placed on probationary status by PED as a school with the early college designation due to not meeting the requirement of 80% of graduating seniors earning 12 or more college credits. The reasons for this are many and include the interests of ECO students, credit recovery needs that exist for some, and challenges for students in accessing dual credit courses in the areas of interest due to availability, prerequisites, scheduling, and transportation. The choices we currently face at the district related to this probationary status are either to submit an improvement plan that will demonstrate how we will achieve the 80% requirement this school year, or to voluntarily drop the early college designation and create a new name for ECO that does not include the words early college. Our data review shows that even with maximum effort to enroll our current seniors in dual credit opportunities, we could at best achieve 60% of graduating seniors reaching the 12 college credit mark this school year. Additionally, it's important to note that the vast majority of students who choose ECO do so due to the career-based course offerings and the smaller school size, not due to its early college designation. For all these reasons, this is a great opportunity for ECO to begin a planning year to revise how it can build on opportunities for students to pursue their passions and achieve their dreams in the career pathway of their choice through the expanded opportunities a reimagined ECO can provide. So please welcome Principal John Size to share his vision for his school.
Thank you very much, Board Vice President Bose, Board members, Superintendent Dr. Griffin. I'm John Sice, and I'm the principal over at ECO. That's kind of hard to say in front of you, Ms. Bose, but principal of ECO. One thing I want to start out with is ECO has a strong foundation. They've had great leaders, a great plan. They've shown us what post-secondary success can mean. Our goal is not to move away from what we're doing. What we're doing well. But our goal is to add more meaningful options for students. We currently serve around 190 students in grades 9 through 12. One thing when I started looking at this, I looked at the district strategic framework, and priority 4, responsive systems and future-ready pathways, is right where we're trying to move towards. Our vision is for every student to have a meaningful pathway to their next step. College is one pathway, a career is another, an industry certification, apprenticeship, or credential can be another. For some students, it will be a combination of all of them that they're looking towards. Our goal is not to define success for students. Our goal is to create the pathway that allows students to define success for themselves. One thing I did this summer is I met with as many people as possible, whether it be former administrators, whether it be district officials, parents, students, staff, and I talked to them about what's going on here. What are we seeing? What's going on? What do we need? What can we do? And after meeting with all of them, One thing really resonated with me is that our students need options. Some students see college as their next step. Some want to enter a skilled trade. Some want to earn a certification and go directly into the workforce. Some want an apprenticeship. Some want to start a business. And some students, again, want a combination of these. Our responsibility is to create pathways that meet students where they are and help them get where they want to go. There's a lot of opportunity out there. I was doing some late night Googling, searching for answers and trying to find out information. And one thing that I saw is that in New Mexico, there's 1,900 skilled trades workers needed every single year. Across the nation, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, it projects around 650,000 jobs a year needed for skilled workers. That's a lot of workers. I want to help fill that gap. These are not fallback options for people. These are strong careers that could provide strong wages, benefits, opportunity for advancement, and possibly even entrepreneurship for our students. This means leaning further into careers, credentials, and industry certifications that we have in the past. We want our students to graduate with something they can take with them. Again, a college degree or college credits, industry certification, CTE credentials, technical skills, work-based learning experiences, an apprenticeship. The goal simply isn't for students to graduate. The goal is for students to graduate prepared for something. What will be different for us? The biggest change is moving from an early college model to a pathway model. A pathway model is a sequence of courses, hands-on experiences, credentials, and partnerships that connects what a student is interested in today to what they can do after high school. Students will still have access to college courses and dual credit, but we will also provide pathways toward associate degrees, industry certifications, CTE credentials, again, apprenticeships, workforce experiences in the traditional college. We want students to move from participants, and what that means is if they take one class in a field, they're a participant, to two classes becomes a concentrator, and taking 3 or more classes makes them completers. There's a lot of certifications with that. There's also funding that comes when we move that direction. Again, it shouldn't just be, this is a class on my schedule. This is what I'm doing next. It should be, we need to look at student interest, coursework, hands-on learning. Again, just giving our students what they need. Again, the why is important. We don't want students simply taking a class. We want students to know, why am I taking this class? What skill am I developing? What certification can I earn? What job does this connect to? And what education or training comes next? Students should be able to see the destination while they're still in high school. Again, we know we cannot build this alone. It's going to take strong partnerships with colleges, with industry, and our community. Santa Fe Community College will remain an important partner. We want to strengthen our partnership with LANL. We want to work with unions and industry partners. We want to explore additional post-secondary partnerships. We want industry at the table helping us design the pathways, not simply waiting for our graduates at the end. Students should be able to see the connection between what they are learning today and what they can do tomorrow. Again, we already have a very strong CTE foundation at ECO. The next step is identifying where there is both student interest and workforce demand. Before I go into these, I know you have it in front of you. I see your eyes bulging, but I want to state that there is capital outlay, grants, and bonds that could help with this process. There are great fields out there with HVAC, plumbing, electrical. We're part of Perkins and Region B, and construction is one of the main areas that Perkins is focusing on this year, and all these fit that area. Again, there's capital outlay grants and bonds that could help pay for it. And again, that doesn't, just because I wrote them down, I wanted to put some options out there. I put a higher price than possibly what it will be. But again, it doesn't even mean we're going to move that direction. I just wanted to provide some examples. There's also emerging fields such as quantum computing. And again, we're not saying every pathway will happen. It's just what's out there. Year one is about listening, researching, and determining what makes sense. We want to invest in programs that are sustainable. We want to make sure we have the staff, equipment, industry partnerships, certifications, and student interest to make each pathway successful. Our first year is exploring and doing research. Again, you explore, you design. We will listen to students, families, staff, industry, and community partners. We will research workforce and labor market needs. We will visit comparable schools and programs. We will research certifications, licensing requirements, and industry standards. We will identify potential new pathways. We will determine which pathways are sustainable and aligned with student interest. And we will build partnerships before launching any programs. I kind of looked at a year at a glance, our first year, looking at we need to get out. We need to be going to other schools that are doing stuff similar to this. What we'll do will be better than what they're doing, but we still want to check them out. We're going to be in planning meetings, collaboration, and work groups. We're going to have industry and advisor consultations, dual credit, college consultation, focus groups, surveys, community engagement. And again, just a lot of research. And so what we're asking for is for subs so I could take staff with me. Again, this is not just me. We need the staff involved and as many people in this process as possible. And so that's kind of what we're looking at doing. The big shift, this really comes down to one major shift. We are moving from a school defined by one pathway to a school that helps students find their pathway. Again, could it be college? Could it be career? Could it be an industry certification, apprenticeship? For some, again, it could be all of them. For some, it could just be one or two. Not all students will take the same path, but every student should have a path. The goal is for students to leave ECO knowing what their next step is and how they are prepared to take it. Thank you, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seiss. Any questions from the board?
I'll move for approval.
Yes, I mean, I have things to say.
Sorry. Sorry, Member Bate.
Go ahead, Board Member Flip.
Thank you, Vice President Bose. So you're going to keep, because in the proposal, you keep calling it ECO. ECO will do this, ECO will do that. Are you going to do, is it going to change the name soon, or are you going to wait for the sessions? And then I have another question. So I dig the idea of pathways, and, you know, we have had discussions with the Santa Fe Community College, especially around quantum computing because of the grant that they just got. And so I would want those pathways, especially when it comes to quantum, especially post-quantum cryptography, to be available to all our high schools. So how does that separate, and how would the future ECO look in relation with those pathways to some of like, obviously some of the CTE stuff would be obviously specific to ECO, but some of those other pathways could be expanded to other high schools, which would be my preference, and other junior high schools. And so how would that kind of play into all this?
Board Member Blea, one of the things that I really appreciate about ECO is that currently students from Santa Fe High School and Capital are able to take classes. It's a block schedule. There's some finesse that has to happen either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. I've seen other districts use a school like ECO as a hub for CTE and offer classes where kids from all schools, including Mandela as well, could be afforded to take classes there.
Okay, so then the next, sorry, so the next question is if we're looking as a pathway to do associate's degrees, as that's one of the pathways, right now we're struggling to get 12 credit hours.
Mm-hmm.
How do we increase going from lack of 12 credit hours to an associate's degree? What's the plan there? And then the other question I have is ECO going to be, to your word, the hub that would then offer the dual credit that we have spoken about with the community college would that be the hub for that, or would that be also open to native high schools, like at their native schools? Like, I guess I'd be confused about how that would roll out. The question isn't insignificant because I think this may come up at the legislature. I kind of have a suspicion that it will.
Thank you, Vice President Bose, Board Member Blea. That's why the exploratory year is really important for us to see what the need is. Can ECO become ECO or ECHO early college and career opportunities? It could become lots of different things underneath this year of exploration. But to answer your question specifically, the way that I have seen associates programs set up successfully is really the students have to be on the community college campus, or it needs to be set up in a way that professors are coming to the campus where the schools are at. And right now, the way that classes are offered, they're offered during the day when students are enrolled in our schools. And so it's just the accessibility just isn't there for them. So I have met with Becky Rowley, President Rowley, to be able to talk through some of these things and set up a program. And we're really going to look proactively of doing that. Will it live under ECO? It could. Will it become its own stand-up program? It could, but that's where really this year of having the freedom to explore and become whatever it is that our students and our families really need that School of Innovation to be. But right now what we're seeing is students really they're hungry for the CTE, the college and technology education.
Last fall.
College, not college, sorry, career. I heard it come out of my mouth and
So, from my perspective, right, the presentation really speaks to a lot of things that I 100% believe in, like with everything that I am. So it's super important to me that we actually do these pathways. But going back to the original two options with the good old PED, so one option is remediate and get the 12 credit hour kind of thing going, and the other one is to kind of shift around and drop the college designation. Is there any impact? Because obviously the 12, we're not going to remediate, so that's not really an option. So the option really is going to do the pathways part and drop the college stuff. But is there any penalty? Are they going to yell at us? Are they going to do anything for doing that? Or what does that look like?
I'll let Deputy Superintendent Gardner speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Board Member Bleo, we've had conversations with PED, and the question was asked, what if we just decide to drop it? And they're like, that's fine. Yeah.
Any other questions before I make my comments? All right. Well, thank you for this. I think it's incredible. I just want to recognize the other former presidents, principals of ECO that are sitting over there, because all of you are great leaders for that school, have been great leaders building the culture, building the enrollment. Like, it's been a really cool thing to watch. And I know that there was really intentional work around the schedule changes so that ECO and the special programs that they offer really are more accessible to other schools. And I just think it's fantastic. So, Mr. Ryan worked with my dad last year when my dad came and did a tiny house project at ECO. My dad is the son of two teachers, a kindergarten teacher and a high school shop teacher. So he comes by it really honestly. And he's retired now, sort of. He's helping Youth Works because he can't fully retire. But this is like his dream. Like, there's a need in the industry. He's been a general contractor for 15 years. There's an incredible need to have skilled workers. These are great jobs for folks, and like, kids love to work with their hands. Like, let's show them how they can do that, how they can have good careers, and also help build all the houses we need in our community. Right? I'm sure that the board member Abeta knows that struggle well also. So thank you. I think this is incredible, and I'm really excited about it. Yes, Secretary Gonzalez.
Thank you, Vice President Bose. When I first ran for school board, I met with the plumbers and electricians and all, and they said, we really wish, we're getting older, and we really wish you wouldn't just promote college, that you'd also promote the trades. And I think it's really important. And the other day we had a plumber come to our house in a MG. So I think they do pretty well.
All right, I think we're ready for that motion now. Board Member Abeyta.
Move for approval. I'll second.
All in favor of approving the application for the Schools of Innovation for Early College Opportunities, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
All right. We are moving on to board discussion and possible action. And the first item on that part of our agenda is the New Mexico School Board Association call for 2027 legislative resolutions. We all got an email about that, and I don't think that anything was submitted. So, the NMSBA presents their legislative priorities at our December annual meeting. So stay tuned. I'm sure you'll see them in your email before then, and hopefully, they aren't missing anything. Otherwise, that's where we should speak up.
But we're supposed to be turning in our resolutions by September 8th.
Right, but we don't have any.
Okay.
No, nobody, nobody initiated any. So I guess we don't have any this year. And some years we don't. I think last year we supported the 80/20 health insurance that we knew was going to be pushed. So then we move on to our 2026-2027 school year Board of Education Committee representatives, which is what President Noble was referencing before she left. So that's the committees that we as board members sit on, and we heard her say she's happy to continue on audit committee and has asked board member Blea to be chair. I am happy to continue on CRC. I have asked board member Blea to chair because I'm ready for a break.
Board Member Abeyta.
Sorry, board member Abeyta.
Yeah, and I'm happy to.
Wow, he's cheering. Wow, really?
And I'm happy to stay on CRC and also PI.
Okay, and you're happy to chair.
And I'm happy to chair.
Thank
yes.
you.
And I want to be on the same committees, PI and the state board.
Great. That sounds fantastic.
Is it?
Check and check. The last thing that's there on the agenda is that we did have our CRC meeting last week. I think it was last week. Time is a little weird right now. And the CRC asked the board to give some guidance, which we have a habit of doing sort of at the beginning of the school year. We have a new committee, a few new members maybe, but sort of to scope our work for the year. We will have another board meeting before our next CRC meeting. So I think it's important that it be there, that we have the conversations. We, in the spring, talked about, sort of this midtown work that we knew needed to be done. And I think in reality, that is part of the bigger picture. And I think we've done this strategic framework meeting now. I think we're all in a little bit of a better place to think about where we're moving as a district, and hearing some of the schools of innovation start to come forward. Things are sort of shifting, I think, and sort of coming into view. So we're welcome to have that conversation now, and I would ask maybe that it still be on the next meeting agenda so that President Noble can be part of that discussion as well.
And Vice President Brose, I would ask if the superintendent would kind of list for us the 2 or 3 things we discussed at CRC, because one of the other things too was we got a bond approved for the
admin building.
Mm-hmm. And so if you could start with kind of the 2 or 3 things that you think we need to focus on, and by all means, Vice President Brose is right. I think the Midtown and just that whole discussion, we know what our enrollment numbers are now. We have a good idea as to what's going on with our facilities. But yeah, we need to start kind of having more of a discussion about that.
I just want to recognize General Counsel at the mic.
Oh, there we go.
Sir.
Good evening, Vice President Bozay, board members. Just to finish up with item B under board discussion and possible action, it seems like you guys came to an agreement. I think you should probably make a motion on that, though.
Okay, thank you for hopping up.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go back and make some motions then. I'll try to capture everything. On the audit committee, we will reappoint Board Member Blea, President Noble. Board Member Blea will be chairing. On the CRC, we will have Board Member Abeta and myself. Board Member Abeta will be chairing. And are each of you on another committee? And Board Member Abeta will be on PI, Secretary Gonzalez will be on PI, and the State School Board Association representative. Does that sound accurate?
Yep.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of those appointments as outlined, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Now we can hop back to our CRC.
I want to have the CRC discussion because I'm like super confused about what the relationship between the CRC and the board is. I always have been, but I'm just not really prepared to do it tonight.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So it's there. We'll add it to the next agenda. Keep, like think about that. So the CRC, perhaps the superintendent or myself can send you the committees of the board policy. In general, it's monitoring the GO bond and the capital projects that are happening in the district, construction projects, how those things are being moving along. Are they staying on track? Do we need to recommend reallocation of funds to ensure that projects get done? It's a lot of facilities discussion, but we keep bumping into this issue of facility needs and enrollment issues, and how those things interact. So as we, as a board, continue to become more clear around some of the innovative things we're doing to drive our enrollment trends, then we want to think about how that interacts with our facilities.
Yeah, see, and to that end, so I have one of my cousins is a superintendent in another district. And she said, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. Don't be like us because we closed some schools and then we had a population boom and now we're screwed. So, I mean, she didn't say that. I'm sorry. But I tend to paraphrase. But
we've noticed.
Yeah, sorry. But that's kind of where I'm trying to like wrap my head around. Like, okay, we have these projects, but I mean, I never hear about them. Like, we never hear about them. So, I mean, not never. You guys know, but I don't. So. I mean, that's why I think we should have a bigger discussion and, just so I could, like the three things that you asked for and like kind of where we're at, like the specifics, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, just to point out on our contracts tonight, there was an $11.3 million contract to finish the Mandela work. So then you'll go to the ribbon cutting and then you'll see the work. But that's sort of how it goes. The committee talks about the project, how the funds are going, and then the board approves the contracts or accepts the recommendations. But yes, I do think, and the CRC regularly is like, but what is the board thinking? And it's sometimes we do our best to represent the conversations that we've had recently, but if we're not having an intentional conversation around it, then, it's hard to do that. So I think that's the goal, is to have a really intentional conversation about how we want the committee's work to go in the next year and align that with our vision as a board. Thank you. Anything else to add on board discussion and possible action?
Well, actually, I don't know if it's on advanced planning or no.
It's advanced.
Okay.
Okay. Then we will move on to advanced planning.
Okay, so at the last board meeting, Deputy Superintendent Salazar talked about, and Superintendent talked about a study session on the vacancies, the 11,000 vacancies, and also how that relates to the 6,000 sick days. And so for the need for substitutes. And so we kind of talked about a study session, and I don't see that on here. So, I mean, can we put that on there, or what's the process for that?
Board Vice President Bose, Board Member Blea, you read my mind. One of them, I have a sticky note here, is when do we want to do the special study session about substitutes? And I wrote down September 17th, October 1st, or October 15th, which are Thursdays that come in between board meetings as possible study sessions for that. Were there other study sessions that you were interested in? Yeah.
Right. Which I would say takes precedence over vacancies.
Mhm.
So if we want to put a pin in that
Okay.
and then see where we go with the possible need for a study session around data and AI and whatnot. But sort of mid-October sounds like it might be.
October 15th, a possibility.
Yeah, like
Yep.
pencil that
Okay.
and check with board president as well.
I'll add it to advance planning just as just to hold it as a tentative study session on October 15th, if that works for our board members.
I have something else on advanced planning, Vice President Bose.
Okay. But that date works for you
Yes.
if we were to have a study session?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Just real quick, are we having a CRC meeting on the 16th?
Yes.
We have a board meeting the next day. Should we not have a CRC meeting on the 16th till we have this discussion on the 17th?
Well, we're having a meeting on the 10th first, a board meeting.
Oh, okay.
That'll be our next board meeting.
Okay, I just saw tentative executive session and.
2 weeks
Okay,
from
I
today.
wasn't reading
Yeah.
all the way. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, that's actually a finance subcommittee tentative. So I don't know if we'll have the 17th meeting. But yes. So advanced planning. Labor Day, September 7th, district is closed, no schools. Enjoy your extra day off. Thank you, union. September 10th, audit committee, September 10th, board meeting, September 16th, CRC, September 17th, tentative study session, finance subcommittee. And I think that's far enough to go for now. We will await next steps, board member Blea and I, about policy planning and whatnot. I appreciate all of you. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.